All right, well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. I'm Dr. Mickey McComb-Kobza. I'm the director of Ocean First Institute. We're the nonprofit organization affiliated with Ocean First. It is my deep pleasure to be able to introduce Jeff Blumenfeld tonight. I just want to take a moment to just say that I've known Jeff for several years now, and Jeff has always been a connector, and Jeff has opened up some amazing doors for me by being very generous with his contacts and his resources. Jeff has come to talks of mine and invited me to give talks at the Explorers Club. He also invited me recently to a Vail Roundtable where I met some extraordinary people, and it has been life-changing. So Jeff, I can't thank you enough for being the amazing connector that you are. And I'm going to take 1 second here just to read some of an introduction about Jeff so that you have a little bit of understanding about his past and who he is. He has dedicated his career to adventure marketing. He is a fellow of the Explorers Club and the Royal Geographic Society. He's served in communication roles for historic expeditions, including the 1,000 Days at Sea, history's longest unsupported sea voyage, and the first confirmed dog sled expedition to the North Pole. For 25 years, he has chronicled expeditions and adventures around the world and into space as editor and publisher of the monthly Expedition News. He is the chairman of the Rocky Mountain chapter of the Explorers Club, where he serves on the club's prestigious Flags and Honor Committee. He is an adjunct professor at the University of Colorado Boulder College of Media, Communication and Information. And his second book, published in 2019, is titled Travel with a Purpose, A Field Guide to Voluntourism. A graduate of Syracuse University, he holds a Bachelor of Science in Television and Radio from the SI Newhouse School of Journalism. He is also fluent in Morse code, although it doesn't come up much in conversation. Everybody tonight, I am honored to share Jeff Blumenfeld with you now. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mickey. And I haven't been this excited about talking to people all over the country. I see we have 33 on here. I've been this excited since I was a ham operator when I was 12 years old, but I gave that up. Right now, I'm also thrilled to be part of Ocean First's inaugural Zoom presentation tonight, which makes me think with the amount of snow that we have gotten in Boulder. Here's your typical lawn chair shot that everybody loves to see. With the amount of snow that we've gotten here, it's nice to be able to do this in the comfort of my home with no pants on. Many of you may have thought about writing your own book, and I had always thought about writing my own book. And the way it started for me, my journey began when I was at a conference, and this guy walks by, and I chat him up and ask him what he does for a living, and he says he's a book agent. And I say to myself, oh God, I got to write a book. And he says to me, yeah, like I hear that a lot. What's your book going to be about? And I said, well, my book's going to be about a guy who wants to go to Antarctica and climb a mountain in Antarctica named after himself. And my book's going to be about a guy that went to the North Pole by dog sled. So the book agent says, that sounds great. Write a book proposal. Now, the way to get an advance in book publishing is you have to write a proposal. You don't write the whole book, you write the proposal. First chapter, last chapter. But importantly, you have to explain who are the 10,000 of your closest friends that are actually going to buy the book. Well, I said to him that I don't know anything about writing a book proposal. And he said, we'll buy my book. And I said, well, what's your book? Book proposals that sell. So I said, okay, wise guy. I bought his book. I marked it all up. And a few months later, I came back to him with a book proposal. He sent that out to publishers. And let me share this screen. I was able to, wait a minute. Yep, there it is. I was able to get my first book published. Now, this book was about getting somebody to sponsor the trip of your dreams. It came out in 2014. And subsequent to that, I came out with a book on voluntourism. Now, this isn't a great time to promote a tourism book, but I have great confidence that the world is not going to be this way, into next year. And we will get back to travel like we did before. And we will have opportunities again to not only see the world, but make a difference at the same time while you do that. And for now, there are lots of volunteer opportunities close at home, which I can tell you about. So let me tell you what my journey is. I was privileged to start as a membership in the Explorers Club, 3,600 members around the world. And it's the Explorers Club that introduced me to a whole range of explorers. And members have included over the years, Cook, Perry, Amundsen, Sir Edmund Hillary, who I've met, Tor Heyerdahl, I was privileged to meet. I shared a cab with Carl Sagan. Yeah, let me pick these names off the floor that I'm dropping. It was just a great experience, and I'm such a groupie in exploration. And now I'm privileged to be the head of the Rocky Mountain chapter. There are 33 chapters around the world, and I'm privileged to be the head of one of the chapters. And as head of that chapter, I get calls a lot from explorers. This marine explorer called me, and he said he needed my help because I knew a thing or two about volunteering, and I knew a thing or two about getting sponsors. I said, yeah, Barry Clifford. I said, Barry, how can I help? He said, well, I discovered something. And he gave me 2 words. He gave me those 2 words. My hands started to shake. What were those 2 words? He discovered the location of the Santa Maria, Columbus's flagship. He discovered off the coast of Haiti. We had a giant press conference in New York. That's the Explorers Club flag in New York. And there's one of the cannons that he traced back to the Santa Maria. Very exciting for me to work on that. Then this gentleman calls me. He wants to do something that's, I thought was rather unique. This is Norman D. Vaughan. Norman called me and he said he wanted to climb a mountain in Antarctica named after himself. And I said, well, Mr. Vaughan, how does that happen? And he said, he's the last surviving member of Admiral Byrd's expedition of 1928 to 1930. And there is the mountain. It's only 10,000 feet. It's not particularly tall, but there's the mountain. No one had ever climbed it before because it's hard to get to. It's in Antarctica. And Norman D. Vaughan was on the phone looking for sponsorship, which I helped him get a little bit of sponsorship on that. There he is in the plane looking at Mount Vaughan for the first time. And there he is, Norman Vaughan, at the age of 88, being top roped, literally being pulled up the mountain. But give the guy a break. He's 88. He had an artificial knee, and he's being pulled up to the top of a mountain named after himself. There's Norman in the middle. There's his guide, Vern Tehouse, on the right. And on the left is Norman's wife. Now, Norman's wife was 50 years younger than he. And I said to him, Norman, your wife is, 30 years younger than you are. What's going to happen when there's a death? And Norman said to me, I'll get a new wife. So there's something about older explorers and their younger partners. And there's Norman. He died at the age of 100, still with plans to return to the mountain named after himself. Now, because this is Ocean First, let's go to sea. And let's go to sea with Reed Stowe. Reed is another gentleman that called me up, wanted to do something never before done in the history of mankind. By this time, it's like, oh, okay, what's that? He wants to get in a sailboat and stay out at sea for 3 years straight. And I said, Reed, how is this supposed to work? What are you going to do for water? He's going to catch rainwater. I said, what are you going to do? I don't know, scurvy. He's going to grow sprouts and eat sprouts. I said, what are you going to do for protein? He's going to eat fish. And I said, 3 years at sea, you're going to be talking to fish at the end of that time. Well, Reed was not going to do this solo. Reed was going to do this with Sonia Ahmad. Sonia, again, was 30 years younger than Reed. There you go, older explorer, younger partner. As he set sail, in a 72-foot gaff-rigged schooner. And now he's not going for distance, he's going for time. So he doesn't care that he's drawing an outline of a heart on the nautical map. Everything's going well except day 15, the boat hits a container ship and the bowsprit falls off. Day 306, his girlfriend is incapacitated by seasickness. She's got to get off the ship. Only it wasn't seasickness, it was morning sickness. And on day 457, she has his child back in Queens, New York. Where's Reed? Well, Reed's got to be at sea for 3 years straight. So he stays out there. On day 846, he breaks a previous record. On day 1000, he calls in because his project is called 1,000 Days at Sea. And he stays out there until day 1152. And there's Reed. I took this shot of him off Sandy Hook. There's Reed Stowe on day 1152. And we have a big ceremony for him as he steps foot back on land. And there's his son, totally freaked out. Maybe freaked out because I invited just a few members of the press to cover his event. And there's a big poster in the back that says, welcome back, Reed. A great story of inspiration. And Reed's still around, still married to Sonia, and his son's doing great. Now you're probably thinking, you're not going to sail around the world, you're not going to climb Everest. Well, what about golf? And so I worked with Andre Thome. Andre Thome thought that he would do a great adventure. By the way, there's a difference between expedition and an adventure, and a difference between an explorer and a tourist. A tourist goes out and tells you all the great places they've been to. An explorer, on the other hand, goes out, tells you where they've been, but tells you what they learned as part of that project. So an expedition is a trip with a purpose. An adventure may not have any purpose, but they're fun to talk about. And this gentleman wanted to hit a golf ball across Mongolia, which he did. He got sponsors for it. He had a $4,000 budget. He hit 510 golf balls, which was a par 11,880. I love telling the story of Andre Thome. This beautiful woman is the late Barbara Hillary. Barbara Hillary called me up one day and said, well, Barbara wanted to go to the South Pole. And I said, Barbara, tell me a little about yourself. She said she was 75 years old. She's a retired nurse. She's a lung cancer survivor. And she wants to go to the South Pole and is looking for sponsorship. And I said, well, why would anybody want to sponsor you? And Barbara said, because I just got back from the North Pole. Barbara Hillary, at age 75, goes to the geographic North Pole in 2007. Got a little bit of sponsorship from Buck Knives, from Cool Clothing, from Smart Wool Socks, but mostly paid 50%, paid about $22,000 to go on that trip. And sure enough, she got enough sponsors together with her reputation to go to the South Pole at the age of 79. And there is a pole at the South Pole. That's what it looks like. Those are the skis that you wear, big extra wide bindings for the bunny boots that you put on. And she goes to the South Pole. Now that was pretty impressive. So she's at the South Pole, and it turns out that she gets her name on Wikipedia. Barbara says to me, you know, Jeff, I'm the first African-American woman to get to the North Pole. I said, that can't be. She says, prove me I'm wrong. So I go online, and she's right. And then after she got to the South Pole, as you can see here, she became the first known Black woman to reach the North Pole, and then became the first one to reach both poles. And that's pretty impressive. But what really impressed me was the fact that she got her picture up in Katz's Delicatessen. Now that is impressive to me, having eaten many pastrami sandwiches at Katz's. At this point, and I've given these talks basically all over the country, people say, well, what's left to explore? What's left to explore? Well, how about great mysteries that still exist to this day? So 1924, George Mallory and Sandy Irvine climb Everest? Did they make it to the top? Well, we're not quite sure. Mallory's body was found in 2009, treated with great respect. Conrad Anker found the body, great respect. But where's the camera? Where's the camera that we know that they carried with them to Everest? Where is the Kodak vest pocket VPK camera, which kind of looks like this? By the way, this is called autographic because actually quite clever. There was a little trap door in the back, and it came with a stylus, and you would write on the back of it, Uncle Charlie, and Uncle Charlie's name would come up on the printed picture. So where's the camera? To this day, once this travel ban is lifted, explorers hope to go back, find the camera, develop the film, and try to solve one of the greatest mysteries in exploration. What's another mystery? Now, I show this picture at my class at CU. They're all millennial 20-year-olds. Maybe 1 out of 20 will know this picture. Will know that this is a picture of Amelia Earhart, who was lost in 1937 while flying this plane, this Lockheed Electra 10E. And to this day, they're still looking for what happened to Amelia Earhart. Bob Ballard did a search of the Republic of Kiribati by Nikomora Island. Still hasn't found it. Right now, an explorer in Boulder is looking to try to match this piece of aluminum to a patch in the plane. They have the piece of aluminum. They're trying to see if it matches up to the rivet holes in this plane. It's one of the great mysteries, so stay tuned on that. When we talk about voluntourism, I was privileged to be a volunteer chaperone on a trip to Antarctica. That trip is in the upper left-hand corner. You see the Antarctic Peninsula. That is the banana belt of Antarctica. I was privileged to go with a group called Students on Ice. People ask me, how big was the ship? My answer is not big enough, because the ship goes across the toughest water on the planet, the Drake Passage. And if you go across the Drake and you don't get sick, well, you're kind of getting ripped off, because that's part of the experience. And believe me, I got my money's worth going across. And this is it was quite utilitarian. This was no Love Boat, no Carnival cruise. The seats were all bolted down. That's the dining room. But getting there, just some of the scenery was absolutely amazing. The little bits of icebergs are called Bergy bits. And if you break them off and put them in a glass, the air that's been trapped in there for 10,000 years starts to bubble as if you were drinking club soda. Just the scenery. You can't take a bad picture in Antarctica. And every day we would go into Zodiacs and we'd go ashore. We'd go to a place like this and we'd see penguins, where we were told not only did we disinfect our boots going off the ship and coming back on the ship, but we were told not to interact with the penguins and just let them be. This is a location down in Antarctica. You can't take a bad picture. It's just amazing, as if Jackson Hole had a seashore. It was just one of the most life-changing experiences that I've ever been able to go on. And if you need a screenshot, well, Antarctica is the place to go. This is what it looked like at midnight. So I also volunteered my time. And by the way, this is the website for Students on Ice. You might want to make a note of that. Sometimes they have scholarships for deserving high school students. I also was able to leverage my time and volunteer on a trip to Nepal on an eye mission. Nepal has a population of 28 million. 30% live on less than $14 per person per month. And if you're blind in Nepal, it's literally a death sentence. So I went with a group of superstar ophthalmologists, and we were there to find as many cataract cases as we could. We solicited the support of a group of Buddhist monks who came with us into the villages. That's the Explorers Club flag. Great group of monks. They were trilingual. They spoke Nepali, Tibetan, and English. They have the whitest teeth for some reason and the longest fingernails. We got into the village in Lower Mustang region of Nepal, and we were just slammed with villagers who came out for all kinds of maladies, but we were mostly interested on this volunteer trip of mine to find those that were blind for no other reason than the lens of their eyes were clouded over. And so because many of the Nepalis were illiterate, we used what's called a lazy eye chart. And we asked them to look at the chart and tell us which direction the E was facing. And from that, we screened for candidates for eye cataract surgery. And cataract surgery is one of the most gratifying surgeries that any surgeon can do, because you go from absolute blindness to 20/20 or close to 20/20 overnight, and there's no follow-up. You are cured through cataract surgery. And so this is Chinja on the right. She's 65 years old. She came into the eye camp piggyback style. She had been blind for 3 years, and overnight, Chinja received her sight back, and it just was amazing to see. And for us, we did about 3 dozen cataract surgeries. I like this shot because I took it with the panoramic feature on my iPhone. So while I was in Nepal, I was absolutely shocked by the living conditions, by the Nepalis who were living as if they were back in the Stone Age with open fire pits in their home. And I came across a group based in Taos, New Mexico, called the Himalayan Stove Project. They were able to find a clean, fuel-efficient cook stove, and now they've shipped 6,500 to Nepal. It reduces indoor air pollution by 90%. It's 75% more fuel efficient, and it cooks 50% faster. We were able to profoundly change the lives of 6,500 people in Nepal through shipment of these cook stoves. We were able to take their home, which looked like this when we got there, and turned it into this. We call her the Happy Cooker. We've nicknamed. So we went from this, and 4.33 million people a year die from household air pollution, and there's no need for that. So from that to that, and I was thrilled to volunteer some time with the Himalayan Stove Project. So this is the journey that I've been on, which encouraged me to write a book that convinced people that while they travel, wherever they go in the world, even here in the States when they travel, to convince them to lend a hand wherever you go. And I'll explain how easy of a lift that can be. So in my research, I saw, now this is all pre-COVID, obviously, but 1.6 million active US volunteers. They spend about $2 billion annually up until March. And then when the book came out last year, I received further validation that Travelocity came out that volunteering on vacation is something of appeal to 1 in 4 travelers. And then pre-COVID, again, last December, voluntourism is also on the rise, according to the UK's Independent. So this was actually particularly encouraging to me when the book came out. So looking forward to the point when travel restrictions will be lifted, how do you find the right project? Well, Volunteer Match is the Tinder, is the match.com of volunteering. It's a free database of 120 volunteer organizations. You literally put in your town, your dates, and it pops up all the volunteer opportunities in your town. The last time I looked, there were 900 volunteer opportunities in Denver alone, which encouraged me to volunteer in Denver at Habitat for Humanity has a what they call the Restore, where they take donated product like a Goodwill, but they put it in a store to be sold. It's very similar to Goodwill. Now, When you travel, you can be a volunteerist just by taking 5 pounds of supplies, sanitary napkins, coloring books, children's books, Band-Aids. You log on with Pack for a Purpose, you tell them where you're going, they tell you exactly what to bring, and they'll pick it up at your hotel. Great organization. Now, of course, I write about cruise ships, and cruise ships, I think, have a long way to go before people will feel comfortable going on cruise ships. But this group called Hope Floats asks you where you're going and tells you volunteer opportunities at your port of call. Right here in Colorado, you can get your hands dirty by looking at Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado. They are looking for volunteers to help restore trails and do other outdoor work. Great organization, Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado. And in times of crisis, the Rotary Club is pretty much involved in this group. It's called Shelter Box USA. Wherever there's a crisis in the world, mostly tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, they'll ship right to the crisis. They'll ship this, what they call a shelter box. And you'll have enough products in there to help a family get back on their feet. And a particular interest to me is while the parents are trying to rebuild their home or cook dinner, they're coloring books for the kids. Great program called Shelter Box. Now, the thing about voluntourism is you're not going to get all the fun jobs. You're not going to be able to go to the Florida Keys Wild Bird Center and walk around like a pirate with a parrot on your shoulder. No, they need to know you. You're going to be hosing down the walkway. You're not going to be near the animals until they get to know you. But still, if you're going down to the Keys, they'd love to have your help and volunteer there. Now let's say, considering this travel ban, you don't even need a passport to be a volunteerist. I went and I visited this woman who has an organization called Baby's Bounty. She was absolutely flabbergasted when she learned of a woman that was in a Las Vegas hospital, an underprivileged woman having a baby. The baby had to go home in her husband's sweater. And she said, this cannot be. I am going to create baby bundles. And she pulled together volunteers. She pulled together supplies from a number of different sources. She has a warehouse, and you can apply to get a baby's bundle, which is packed in a childcare seat. Great organization, 60 bundles a month. This woman too is Lighthouse Charities in Vegas. Now you look at Vegas, you think it's this rich city, but once you get off the strip, as I did, as I looked and for research for the book, there's abject poverty. And so Lighthouse Charities has served 170,000 people with food pantries and job training and English as a second language. And then there are food banks in Las Vegas. This is just one city in the United States serving people who are facing food insecurity. And they make 10,000 after-school meals. They need 100 to 200 volunteers a day. It is so easy to volunteer during your next trip to Vegas. You just go online, you pick a time slot, and they tell you where to show up. And you spend the day packing onions. Or I spent some time packing Washington State apples into go bags for kids. And then what did they do with the kids when they're not in school? They put together these backpack for kids. Now I look at it and I say, well, that's chocolate milk, that's full of sugar. And I look at Chef Boyardee in a can, not great. They said, Jeff, they said, these kids would not eat were it not for this. 6,500 kids would not eat on a weekend were it not for these supplies. So that really hit home for me. So fundraising, how do you raise money for your volunteer project? Well, I like the case of a Vala Moon. This couple on the right said, don't give us a Cuisinart, donate to our trip to Nepal, where we're going to work for Habitat for Humanity. Then I met another woman in Norwalk, Connecticut. She was doing a topless car wash. I said, excuse me, topless car wash? She said, yes. Well, we can't reach the top of the cars, so we're not gonna take care of the top of the cars. So you have a big sign that's a topless car wash. You made $5,000 in a weekend. Great idea. You can get matching donations from employers. Of course, lots of crowdfunding, crowdsourcing opportunities, and you can get local business sponsorship. Now, you're not going to do anybody any good if you don't stay safe when you're on a volunteer trip. When you go, you have to be so careful, particularly in Nepal. Only bottled water, and you have to check the bottles, hold it upside down and squeeze it to make sure it's not leaking. The food's got to be hot cooked food. No tuna fish sandwiches, no salads. There's an organization right here in Boulder. They're also all over the country. It's called Passport Health. You tell them the country you're going to, they tell you what inoculations that you need. And I was a human pincushion. I think I got polio, tetanus, hepatitis. I got totally trued up for this. I had had these shots before, but I got totally current. When you're on these trips, you got to stay safe. You don't pet the dogs. The monkeys are cute. Don't pet the monkeys. Don't pet the cats. There are cases of rabies. There are cases of tourists who die from dog bites. And you want to be situationally aware. No earphones when you're walking down the street. No bling. You have to be just totally have your wits about you. Medical evacuation insurance is well worth the price. And you want to bring your meds. You want to bring your first aid. And I also bring a luggage lock, and I bring a little alarm to put on the door. It helps you sleep better at night, knowing that no one's going to come into your room. And these are your best friends. Of course, I look at this now, and Purell is about as worth its weight in gold, or worth its weight in toilet paper these days. But when you go overseas, we were bathing in this stuff, and hopefully the supply of Purell will help improve as we move forward. And Dire Rescue, well, now Dire Rescue, this happens to be a Boulder company, of all things, and this is your best friend too, because I pulled a rookie move on my trip to Nepal, and I've been there twice. I pulled a major rookie move. I forgot that the expedition is not over until you walk back home into your house. So I was in the departure lounge at the Kathmandu airport. Now this is the VIP lounge. You have to have a special pass to get in there. I had not had fruit for a week, and I thought to myself, it's wrapped in plastic. What possibly could go wrong? Well, my distress kicked in somewhere over the North Atlantic, and I spent the next 3 days at home on Dire Rescue. So take it from me, you can't let down your guard when you travel to some of these places. So you're off to great places after we get through this current crisis. Today's your day. Your mountain is waiting. So get on your way. And that comes from that great philosopher, Dr. Seuss. Or as I like to say, lend a hand wherever you go. So thanks very much. Let's stop share. And if Kaitlyn will moderate any questions that people may have. And I see we're right on time. We'll try to finish by 7:15 because nobody likes to be on Zoom longer than they have to.
All right, let's see if we have any questions. Folks were definitely interested in some of the resources, the online resources that are just good places for them to go to for, starting their search. So we mentioned that we would coordinate getting that out to everyone.
Yeah, the book's got 30 groups. My advice is to start now and make a plan for 2021. I don't mean to be a pessimist. but from everything I'm hearing, 2021 might seem to be a little bit of time when we get back to normal. There are groups that you can go in. The Cambodian Children's Fund is a great one. There's Earthwatch Institute. There's Go Eco. There is Leave No Trace, great organization. We talked about Volunteer Match. Trekking for Kids, to get kids involved in an organization. In fact, Trekking for Kids is I believe it's based locally here in Colorado. Volunteers for Peace, Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado. But at its very least, you can bring supplies wherever you go, and this Pack for a Purpose will help distribute those supplies once you get there.
Actually, I have a quick question, Kaitlyn.
Hi.
Hi, Jeffrey. I'm sorry I was a little bit late to the meeting. My name is Amy and I run the travel department at Ocean First. And so I apologize for being a little bit late, but first I want to thank you very much for taking the time out of what I'm sure is your very busy day. Everyone has so many things scheduled on this amazing snowy day like we have. But my question to you is, a lot of the places that we travel to, so we do a lot of group adventures, and something that we always strive for is to find out what each country is a little bit different for what resources they may find are hard to come by or that they would find useful. And I'm wondering if you have an organization that you know of that maybe has a kind of a summary or just like a hit list of the various different, like whether it's school supplies, hygiene supplies, things like that, versus us just assuming like, well, gosh, they probably need,
right,
socks, and then they're like, well, by the way, we live in the Solomon Islands, we don't wear socks. But although I have to say that socks are my new shoes for the COVID environment, they're my new shoes. So, but anyway, I think that would be really,
house slippers.
Or slippers, yeah. So that if you had, something like that, I think that would be enormously helpful, because our clientele is very giving and always wants to, is very aware also of our fortunate position that we are able to go to these countries, and anything that we can do, however small that may seem, could be helpful.
Everybody's got 5 pounds
that
that they can put in their bag. God knows you're already traveling with a BC, and a rag. You've got,
exactly.
God knows you've got a big enough kit bag. But I would recommend, as a start, Pack for a Purpose. Pack for a Purpose will tell you there's a list of countries. They ask you where you're going, and Pack for a Purpose. I'm looking it up. packforapurpose.org, I believe, but you'll see it online.
Okay.
Rebecca Rothney would be very appreciative of your help, and I'm sure at this point there's a lot of need out there that's not being met.
Yeah, exactly.
And
thank you. That's great.
And speaking of Nepal, the Sherpa who depend on tourism are in tough shape. There's a lot of hurt everywhere in the world, and particularly in Nepal, where they're so dependent on tourism. And there's a blog called AlanArnett.com. Alan is a blogger from Fort Collins, very well known. He covers the Everest region, and he has a list of 10 organizations raising money for Sherpa in Nepal. So that's another idea. Any other questions?
Yeah, there was one from Dustin asking, do you have any advice for finding opportunities in some of these harder to reach areas?
Dustin, opportunity, if you'll unmute yourself. Where are you, Dustin? Opportunities to volunteer?
Yeah, exactly. Like if we have a trip planned to, let's say we just got back from Indonesia, for example, before a trip like that, would you suggest any sort of resources where we could look up before we go and see, what organizations we can get involved with, or anything like that? Is there kind of a one-stop shop that might list resources for some of these various places?
Well, of course, Mr. Google, our friend Google, could certainly be of help when you go, if you just put Indonesia or the name of the country plus Voluntourism, and that will really come up. I'm not recalling right now. There are 30 different organizations that would love to have you sign on. I would caution everybody not to volunteer at orphanages unless you really vet those orphanages, particularly in Nepal. The orphanages are for-profit businesses. The businessmen go up into the countryside, say to the families, I'll take your son or daughter. We'll educate them in the big city of Kathmandu, and we'll take them away from you, and we'll take care of them. And what it turns out is the orphanages are not well run, and they're just a money grab for tourists. And the kids are taught to hug the tourists when they visit, and try to get the tourists to donate even more money, but it goes to the businessmen. So be careful about orphanages. I talk about that in the book. So Dustin, I don't know if that answers your question, but there's it really varies by country. There's Honduras Outreach. There's International Volunteer Headquarters, HQ. So there are a number of those groups out there.
Great. No, that's really helpful. Thank you.
And let's all hope we can get back to travel like we did before. But
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Before that, there's a lot of need right here at home. And I signed up to volunteer at the Hour Center, which is not a homeless center in Longmont. It is designed to get insecure families back on their feet. They may pay rent. There's a food kitchen there. They have a small clothing store there. So it's not a homeless shelter. It's just to give people a little extra push to get back on your feet. So I'm a big fan of that. And I'm a big fan of Restore. And I volunteered at the one in Highlands Ranch. So before we get back to normal, there's still opportunities here.
That's awesome. There's one more question here from Denise Patton. She asks, are you aware of volunteer opportunities that pay some expenses during your time doing the activity?
Maybe, yeah. That's where you really need to get your own sponsors to do that. Possibly WOOF might do that, WWOOF. Very often, they're more likely to pay room and board for you rather than to give you a check every month. So many of them will pay room and board. Well, actually not pay it, but provide it to you. But also look at WOOF is focused on organic farms. And there's another group called Workaway, workaway.info. That might be helpful. So the book was written before COVID. The book will still be appropriate after COVID. We just need to get through this period.
Wonderful.
Good. Any other questions?
Thank you so much, Jeff. It looks like we have
30. We were up to, I had 40 people join us, which is terrific.
Yeah.
And we could all do that with our slippers on.
Is the mic open?
I have a question as well.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is
sorry.
Melissa.
Hang on, Joe.
I actually am an ecologist and a wilderness guide, and all of my retreats and expeditions include volunteerism. I was so excited to see about your event because this weekend I was supposed to be in Moab leading Camp for a Cause, where we do adventure activities, kayaking, climbing, hiking, and then we volunteer in the national park. So this is my business model. And so I have two questions. One, because I'm interested in equity of access and increasing opportunities for people who are financially limited to join. So I'm curious to know if you have any guidance or suggestions about creating more funds, doing fundraisers to support scholarship and reduce prices for people with more financial need to still come on these experiences. And my second question is about marketing and outreach, with this being my particular niche in facilitating the whole experience.
Well, yeah. So you've got sponsorship, fundraising that you need to do, and you've got also marketing, and they really do go hand in hand. As far as sponsorship is concerned, what you need to do is sit down and make a list of everyone you know who potentially works at a company that could support this effort. So you want to make your target list. Then you want to create a deck, short deck, about exactly what you're looking for. And you're not looking for donations at that point. You want to give some value to those sponsors. So when you create this deck, this sponsorship ask, you want to indicate what kind of credit these companies may receive. So you create the deck, you indicate what kind of credit they're going to receive as part of this. Make sure your website looks great. Give them an idea of what your platform is, how many people are on your mailing list, that sort of thing. And then as far as marketing, you got to work on that every day to get the word out there. And this is a tough time for that. But perhaps if you look forward to 2021, don't come to a sponsor and ask for $5,000 next month.
Right.
Plan for 2021. And also you got to look at everything in your bag of tricks. There's GoFundMe, there's crowdsourcing that you can look at. I talked about the topless car wash. Not suggesting that you do that, but just it comes from many different sources. And then even your students that are part of that. Can they do bake sales as this? Can they do their own car washes? To go on Student on Ice, the trip I mentioned to Antarctica, it's a last time I looked, it was a $9,000 trip for a high school student. Some of the students had their parents pay for it. Great for them. Other students spent 2 or 3 years on clothing drives, magazine drives, selling grapefruit so that they could fund their own trip to Antarctica. And believe me, to go down there as a high school student, it's life-changing. So I hope to a certain extent that helped. It's really a topic we could spend all day on, but hope that helped. Joe, you had a question, but you're on mute. You have to unmute yourself.
I am unmuted. Hey, good job, Jeff. And I know we've all enjoyed it. I met Jeff actually in Nepal, and the story he tells you about orphanages is true. They're a large problem. An organization that I'm involved with that Jeff knows real well built a 3-story orphanage, and we take care of now 33 children. And as this relates to your subject tonight of volunteerism, I think you're aware of this, Jeff, aren't you? We built a small building beside the orphanage where people can come and spend a month and they can volunteer to help the children. And we particularly need them in the summer when the kids are out of school and they've got time on their hands. And I can tell you that Jeff is an intrepid traveler. He's an indefatigable, is that the word? Indefatigable kind of guy.
I throw up on any ocean I travel on. So get my mind. Now, Joe is based in Houston, and Joe's nickname is Buffalo Joe because Joe thought that he could contribute to this orphanage by providing 2 water buffaloes. And it was like a milkshake machine for these kids. And that was a main contribution that Joe did for this orphanage, which was one of the better ones in Nepal. Any other questions? Well, good. I don't want to hold you too long. Kaitlyn?
Thank you, Jeff, so much. This was wonderful. Thank you, everyone, for coming and participating.
Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
I miss you all so much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Jane, what else
Buy
are
a
you
book
do,
on
right?
Amazon, or the Boulder Bookstore. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Fun. Okay. Leave the meeting.